Cue that beat.
This is what happens. You guys just hear something Eagles, and then it's like a dog. You see a squirrel, it's just,
I would say 75% of all NFL quarterbacks can be dialed down to different flavors of Kirk Cousins. They're all just Kirk Cousins. All of them.
So there's conditions.
No, I absolutely understand do not draft list. If someone's on my do not draft list, I'm not drafting him.
Hey guys, welcome into the Mind the Gap podcast. Today is Edge Rusher Preview Day. We are going to break down our top guys at the edge rusher position. That could be defensive end, right end, left end, outside linebacker. Like the guys that are going to be hand in the dirt on the edge, from Micah Parsons to Josh Sweat to Brian Burns to Myles Garrett's in this draft class. I have 13 ranked. I know Tyler and Ryan, 16. I have 16 ranked. I know Tyler and Ryan might have around that number, but we're going to break it down. We're going to preview the players, talk about who we have and where. I have other rankings pulled up so you can see where the other experts are with us on this topic. Kind of crazy. You all ready to just get right to it? We got a lot of guys to talk about. But before we get to how we have these guys ranked or who the best in the class is, it's Abdul Carter. But before we completely break all that down, Tyler, what do you look for in an edge rusher? Like, I know there's different archetypes, and like you even play freaking Madden, and it says speed rusher, power rusher, run defender, whatever. There's different archetypes, but also what are you looking for when grading a defender like this?
for me, I start off with you have to have traits. Traits are almost a non-negotiable when
What
it
do you
comes
mean
to
by
edge
that?
defenders. So athleticism, your relative athletic score. So how quick, fast, explosive you are for your size, your height and weight. That matters so much for edge defenders.
When you're saying trait, it means you need to have at least one or two things that you can point to and say, that is why this guy is good.
Yeah, elite physical traits. And then you also obviously marry that to tape because you can't be just a freak running around not knowing how to play football. But if you don't have traits, I'm just probably not going to draft you as an edge defender. I did some research when it comes to relative athletic score. Shout out Kentley Platt, who runs this. Really good guy when it comes to the combine. He's going to be pumping these out. He's an awesome follow on Twitter for draft season. Check him out. So this is the relative athletic score of Pro Bowlers as defensive ends since 2000. And I set the over-under at 7. So I got the number of Pro Bowlers for 7 and over, and then for 6.99 and under. So for the over 7, it is 58.
Over 7 RAS score?
Relative athletic score. So
for those who don't know, it's just a tally of like what percentage and what differential are you at each of these different athletic markers: height, weight, speed, strength.
So the best comp for it, if you think to last year, Xavier Worthy runs a 4.21, which is really cool. He breaks the 40-yard dash record, but he's 169 pounds, I think is what he came in at the combine.
Yeah.
Compared to Brian Thomas Jr., who ran a 4.39, which is still fast, but you go, oh, well, Xavier Worthy's faster, but you take into account Brian Thomas Jr. weighing 209 pounds, his relative athletic score for speed is higher because he weighs more and was still running really fast. I think he actually ran a 4.35 now that I'm remembering it.
We should have had him way higher. Like there is he's a top 10 prospect and we all missed it.
It was just a guy who was big, fast, and could catch the ball and track the ball deep. I was like,
Yeah, but
I don't know why I overthought that.
I mean, we nicknamed him, what was it, Buzz Thomas? So
Yeah.
Because we thought his name was too boring and that's why people were off on him.
Yeah, anyway. But so going back to the edge defenders, for relative athletic score over 7, I'm just going to be using RAS from here on out because it's easier. There were 58 since 2000. Under 7, there's 24. And even that number's deceiving because there's some guys like Julius Pepper who would have far and away been more than a 7 relative athletic score or RAS, but they just didn't have stats from the combine that were inputted by Kentley Platt. So the number's probably even more skewed than it already is. When it's paired with good technique and film, that's where you have these elite guys. What I point to also, even apart from RAS, of the top 20 edge rushers and pressures last year, only 3 have a RAS of less than 9. That's Jonathan Grenard and 2 others. Zadarius Smith's one, and I can't remember the third. But guys, like if you're not a freak, you don't become a premium pass rusher. That's just, it is what it is. The other thing that people point to when they talk about the freak versus film debate, They point to Trayvon Walker versus Aiden Hutchinson. Trayvon Walker blew out the combine, was a 10 out of 10 relative athletic score, I'm pretty sure. It's the highest you can get. And Hutch was looked at as a little bit of a lower ceiling prospect. I went back and looked at it. Trayvon Walker's turned into a good player, so I think that discounts the argument first and foremost.
Just not worth the number 1 overall pick.
2 double-digit sack seasons, really good run defender. I kind of take that as a number 1 pick. It's not the top, like he's not Myles Garrett at the number 1 pick for sure, but in a league where you see people flame out number 1 pick, if you tell me I get back-to-back double-digit sack seasons with A-tier run defense, I think I just take that bet.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting argument. I mean, but you also have to think, hold it, is Josh Allen still in Jacksonville?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I would take Trayvon Walker even inside the top 8, maybe even 10 in this year's draft. But that just goes to show you either how poor that draft was or how great this draft is.
Yeah. And I was just talking about with when you don't know what the prospect is, if somebody says, hey, you automatically get 2 back-to-back double-digit sacks.
You're shooting in the dark.
3. Yeah, exactly. So I would just take that certainty. So he was at 10. But I looked back, Aiden Hutchinson had a RAS of 9.88. Like he was a freak. It doesn't matter. If you are a guy that has these high-end traits, I'm just going to bet on that as an edge. And I do also want to see good tape. We're going to get to some guys that I think are athletic freaks that also have better tape than people give them credit for. But man, if you are not, this doesn't apply for every position. Let me get that out first and foremost. But for edge defender, for corner, and for wide receiver especially, if you are not a top S-tier level athlete, I'm not taking you in the first round.
So is that going to change your rankings after the combine on some of these guys?
I think everyone's rankings should be absolutely fluid until like a month before the draft, because we're still getting reports on like character and the combine especially. Because to answer for at least me, yeah, my rankings are going to completely move and change as the combine changes and gives us weights, speeds, just how do they look on turf. I think it's going to change a lot. Tyler, I didn't mean to like fully answer for you, but
no, you're good. I should have led with this, and that's a good point, Ryan. It's got to be traits that I also see on the football field. And so this has got to be stuff that shows up on tape. Oh, he has a really good explosiveness score through his vertical jump and his broad jump. I should be seeing you explode through your hips and strike and shed tackles because you have that lower body power. If I don't, that's not really going to change my ranking of you that much. But I do take the combine numbers into account for sure, and we'll tweak my rankings a little. Maybe it weighs in 5% just to throw a percentage number on it.
Well, as far as what I look for in a good edge player, number 1 is relentless motor. And I think that can just go without saying. If you're even on the backside, if you're not running to the ball, if you're lollygagging, I'm going to yell at you as a coach. And I think every football player has had that moment when he gets outs by a coach in the film room and he's like, why are you not running? So that's just something that goes without saying. And if I catch it, I'm taking note of it.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that just applies to football either. I think everybody, I mean, my mom's yelled at me for not hurrying up too fast. That's just, you got to move. You got to have a motor. You got to be able to move quickly, but especially for edge rushers, relentlessness. I'm just looking back on how many big strip sacks were just non-stop movement. How many times do you watch a guy like Kyler Murray steal an iPad and run out of the pocket like a toddler, and you have to just be fast enough to chase him sideline to sideline? That one of the biggest plays, I think, at least I remember it. It's a play I remember because Jordan Davis chased down a quarterback all the way to the sidelines as a defensive lineman, and we gave him props for that. You have to be able to say, I'll get oxygen on the sidelines. Let's just leave it all this play, and then do that play after play after play.
On top of that, I would add, they need to know their assignment. That I've seen some guys in this class that get lost in the woods or lost in the weeds, and they just forget their job, whether it's purely to fill a gap, purely to take a double team. Some of these guys have lost their assignment at times, and I've also taken note of that and into consideration when ranking these guys.
Does that for you, like, is it the NBA? We talked about the NBA off air. Is it the NBA's star problem where everyone wants to be a super duper star and no one is willing to play a role anymore?
I think gap integrity and knowing your assignment is second to traits. And it could be the very reason you give up a touchdown. It could be the very reason you get a penalty. So when all 11 guys on the field are not playing cohesively and together and all know their assignment at the exact same time, you got problems. And they instantly become a liability on the field.
Run defense from an edge defender, really important.
Turns out, crazy.
Can't just be good at pass rush.
Yeah, got to be able to take your medicine and get to those third and longs. Because if you don't stop the run on first and second down, and I know this is antiquated, not every team runs the ball on first and second down anymore, blah, 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 I understand. But the point still stands. If you don't take care of business on early downs, you don't get to pin your ears back in 3rd and 8.
Yeah, it's. I think there's a lot to look for in an edge rusher, but to summarize that whole conversation, physical traits. We need to see that you have the body type and also the ability to be explosive on the football field. Football IQ. Can you understand the ability and have the ability to stay in your gaps, defend the run, know when it's time to just take a double team and not be on your play, but I think the most important, can you rush the passer? Do you have the strength, speed, bendability to get by a tackle or a guard and get to the quarterback, who is the most important person in any sport, and take him down?
Amen. And we'll get into the weight discussion as well when we get to some of the other prospects, but I want to save that for when we're talking about them.
We ready to just keep it trucking?
Let's go, because I'm pretty sure we all have the same number 1, so we can go ahead and hit that.
Abdul Carter. Abdul, is it Abdul or Abdul?
I've always said Abdul Carter.
Well, I don't even know. Carter from Penn State, edge rusher. Daniel Kelly for the Ringer has him comped to Brian Burns, that's a good comp. I'm on board with it. He's a freak of nature, dude. I mean, I'm looking here at, I think it's the Feldman's Freaks list, and Carter is 12th on the Freaks list, 3rd overall for edge rushers. He is an absolute freak of nature, and he should be a Philadelphia Eagle. He wants to be an Eagle.
That's a little ambitious.
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
I know. But I do want to talk about this. Have we ever seen a player be more clear about who their favorite NFL team is this close to the NFL draft? He's made it abundantly clear he bleeds green.
He got it on a hoodie.
I know.
With his name on it and everything.
I know. Like, Tyler, completely, you're not an Eagles fan. You are just watching this as a draft expert. Your thoughts on the Carter situation? Is it weird? Because it feels weird to me. And I want him to come play in Philly.
I don't know. I mean, I can't think of one off the top of my head where a guy is sold out for NFL teams. I know in high school recruiting to college, there are players that all the time are say, oh, this school is my favorite school. And I grew up being a fan, stuff like that. I can't think, like I said, I can't think of one college to pro off the top of my head, but I think there's some precedent for it. Because he's from Pennsylvania. Is he from the Philly area?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why he ended up at Penn State.
I could totally see him going very high in the draft, out of the reach of the Eagles, but then waiting the 4 years, possibly 5, and leaving in free agency to go to the Eagles.
I don't think so, because
this is one of those special
just
cases.
dreaming so hard, dude.
So I do have an actual, before we completely preview Carter as a prospect, their Eagles are in conversations to get Myles Garrett, right? And I don't think they will, because there's a lot of better suitors for the Garrett conversation than the Eagles. It doesn't really make sense with their, I don't want to say their timeline, but it doesn't really make sense to spend as much as the asking price is going to be too much for them. That said, you could spend a little bit less and just trade up to get Abdul Carter. I'm not saying trade.
Are we sure that would be less?
That's the thing. I wanted to how much would it take to get Garrett? It's probably a player and 2 firsts is the go at current. If they drive up the price like people are expecting them to, how much is it going to take? More or less than that to get up to Carter?
Much more. You're at
More?
the 32nd overall pick.
And you got to get to at least 2.
2. I mean, think that typically it's not the case for everyone.
What if you've worked out a trade prior to draft night? And
That's fine, but it's likely going to cost the Eagles maybe 3 to 4 years of first round picks.
Oh, not that many.
Dude, they are 32 every single year.
That's a fair point. They would have to find a way to get another team's first in there. I don't know what first they have under their control, but if they had I don't know, who would they have traded? They don't trade people away; they trade for people. Maybe if they had the Indy first round pick from the Carson Wentz trade still available, but I don't think they have that anymore.
No.
So
again, extremely ambitious.
Yeah, a comp I thought of for this, just off the top of my head, not an exact thing, but do you guys remember? The Falcons had to trade up with the Browns to get Julio Jones, and they had to trade from 27 to the 6th overall pick. So this is not an exact comp again, but pretty good idea.
What was the haul?
The haul was Atlanta's 27, obviously flipping the picks. 5 picks in total. The first rounder this year, then another first, then a second, a fourth, and another fourth.
So 2 fourths, 2 firsts, and a second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's about what I expected it to be. But I think you also could throw. If they want Bryce Huff, they can have him.
I don't think anybody wants Bryce Huff.
So what's he worth? A fourth? A fifth?
Not even.
Not with that
at
contract.
Yeah, it's brutal. Man, I'm curious to see what happens with Carter on draft night, and I think he's just going to swallow everything he said about the Eagles and just be a champ for whatever team he goes to. He seems like that kind of player. So whatever team he goes to, you're going to have a champion level edge rusher. Do we need to really break down? We should probably talk about who he is as a prospect and what he does. Tyler?
Yes, please, because he is awesome. He's so much fun. There are players, because when you're watching film, you get to players that don't really pop off the film, kind of boring tapes, and you need an oasis sometimes. My film oasis so far this year has been watching Abdul Carter because he is so violent, and that is what I love about him. He is 250 pounds, and he will smack you straight in your face mask in the run game, in the pass game. Ryan talked about how important relentlessness is. There's no one more relentless in this class to me than Abdul Carter. The biggest thing that I look at outside of the traits, some of the film stuff we'll talk about, he's only had 1 year as an edge defender. He was an off-ball linebacker before this. In that 1 year, he had the most pressures in the FBS with 66 and the second highest pass rush win rate. He's only going to get better. This is absolutely insane to see out of a first-year edge guy.
Send the farm. I'm 3 firsts. I want them. Oh, man, I just need him in green. No, he's incredible. And I think that your film oasis is Carter. Mine was freaking Will Campbell from LSU. He might not be, he's my tackle 1, but he's fun. Anyways, Carter, he's been doing this like Micah Parsons. I think having the same helmet as Parsons and having the same number as Parsons, both going to Penn State, has kind of given people. Can y'all hear that?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Toy. Yeah, that's a dog toy. This is what happens when we're borrowing a dog for a week. Of course. That's going to drive me nuts. Power through.
Dude, push, yeah.
But yeah, I think the Micah Parsons comparisons are too easy with being on the same team, same helmet, same jersey number. But I don't think they play the same style. I mean, I like the Brian Burns comp. He doesn't play like Parsons. Parsons plays more. He was a lighter player. He's less talented in the run than I think Carter is as a prospect. And we also had questions about Parsons. Like, he is an absolutely filthy edge rusher, but he's not. They're just different players, right? That's the big thing here, Ryan.
That's what I was worried about when we were talking maybe about a month ago. Was it's hard to not see Micah Parsons, but they two had very different play styles. As far as what I saw that jumped off the tape, the Penn State game versus Ohio State, where Donovan Jackson's first game at left tackle, mind you,
That's the second time tonight.
He almost
Jonathan
got taken
Jackson's
off my
been brought
board
up.
for that game. That was tough.
Yeah.
he did, but he bounced back.
Yeah.
So Micah, I was about to say Micah Parsons.
See, that's the issue.
Abdul Carter had a fantastic game against Donovan Jackson in that game specifically. You saw the high IQ, the pure speed to power. This is the definition of speed to power. It does not get much better than this. He is the number one player in this class. Something I did need to tack some points off for is no hand fighting. I don't see any hand fighting. It's straight to the pads and nothing else. But when you grab onto those pads, he's able to kind of swivel his head, see who has the ball, where they're going, and able to get off the block. But yes, relentless, always looking for contact. So, dude is a prototypical Pro Bowl, possibly All Pro level player.
Yeah. He's one of my 3 blue chip guys for a reason. And I don't think he goes anywhere lower than 4. I mean, we had him going, 2 in our latest mock?
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the board has fallen, it's going to be a quarterback at 1. And unless the Giants trade up to 2, Browns at 2. And I think he goes to the Browns. It's either him or Hunter. And then 3 is the Pats. And I think if he's at, Patriots are 4.
Mm-hmm.
4, Giants are 3. I think he doesn't go any lower than 5 to the freaking Jags.
That's what I was going to say. That's his absolute floor. If
Yeah.
he somehow falls to the Jaguars, they just
And I think if he makes it past 2, I think if Hunter goes to the Browns at 2 and we see Hunter quarterback, which is a realistic possibility, I'm curious to see if a team more needy at edge than Jacksonville tries to trade up to 4 or 5. Because I think we could see someone slide in there from like 14, 15, 16.
I mean, I would love to see Jacksonville take a wide receiver, but again,
I mean, so far they're 1 for 1 in the last draft with wide receivers. Brian Thomas, what a baller.
Yeah. I should clarify. That's what I was thinking with the 5 as well, because the Jaguars don't really need an edge rusher. They have Allen locked up long term, and I think they probably are going to commit to Walker at some point. But you're
Walker's
right,
a good
trade
player.
trade up candidate for sure. The other thing, I've seen some tweets going around saying that he's undersized. He's just not. Like he's listed at 252. That's fine, especially with the violence he plays with, because I either need you to be 265 pounds, 280 pounds, whatever, or I need you to just be a psychopath. And Abdul Carter is a psychopath and is good enough against the run because of that. So also wanted to knock down that talking point.
Aaron, I'm really curious who your number 2 is. I have a different number 2 than Tyler. But
Yeah, one more thing, because I forgot. This is actually my favorite thing about Carter, so I'm sorry to cut you off, Ryan, because I should have just led with this. He's so quick with his body and his hands. Offensive linemen never touch his chest. Like, never. They just don't get hands on him. His rip move, his swim move. He has this cool little Euro step that Micah Parsons has that I was just watching on Twitter, some of his cut-ups. But he's so quick that you go, oh, maybe his arms are a little short. It doesn't matter because they don't touch him. It doesn't get to a point where he has to do the strike and shed, because that was the one con I had. I was like, I probably would like him to do a little more striking and shedding in the run game. It doesn't get to that point ever.
And something I have noticed, and it's very true, is tackles love timing. And if their timing is thrown off, everything's thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a great point, Tyler, is when he gets in their face and disrupts them, the play's over from the very beginning of the
Gets on
snap.
top of them so quick. His first step is otherworldly. The way that he gets his hips, even with the offensive lineman's hips, which is day one
is
teach tape.
crazy.
This is not what you want as an offensive tackle. It's the same thing with wide receivers and corners. There's a saying, if he's even, he's leaving. And that applies. When you get your hips even and you're going forward and the other guy has to go back, you've won. And he does that so much.
We might need to see more backers transition to edge in the future if this is what we get.
I mean, the last 2, maybe it's just Penn State backers transferring to edge rusher, because the last 2 have worked out. So I did a quick little mock here. I have Cam Ward 1, Travis Hunter 2, Shedeur Sanders 3. Could be the Vegas Raiders at 3. Could be the Giants. Whatever. Anyways, but it's Ward, Hunter Sanders, Tet McMillan 4 to the Patriots for the sake of the exercise, or it's Will Campbell, or it's Josh Simmons, etc. Now the Jags are on the clock at 5, and I'm looking at this and I'm saying who could trade up. So I'm going to give you guys options, and you're going to give me 1 being absolutely they would never, 10 being they're absolutely going to. I'm going to mock that in every mock we're doing from now on. The Carolina Panthers.
6.
Ryan?
4. They need the capital.
Agreed. I'm not going to... Chicago is a question, but I'm not going to give them the Cowboys. To 5.
Ooh.
Chicago, I actually might. Pairing with Sweat, if they don't get Myles Garrett, could be a possibility. But if I was Chicago, I would just get another edge in this class.
I agreed. I think this class is deep enough where you don't trade up. Cowboys, 1 to 10.
4, 3.
3.
Okay. Colts. According to PFF, their 2 biggest needs are tight end and edge rusher.
They do need an edge. I'm trying to think. They don't really. I'm trying to think if they trade up like that.
Well, ignore team tendencies. Well, you can't really do that, can you?
I was gonna say I feel.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the exercise.
Yeah, it kind of is.
I go 5 because I would like that if they did that.
I would actually agree with that, yeah.
Falcons at 15. Biggest needs according to PFF, wide receiver and edge rusher.
I would make that move if I was the Falcons.
That is my highest so far. It's the Falcons at 15, and then possibly the Bucks at 19 would be the other two. Would be the 2 teams. I'm like, do they trade up to 5 if he falls to there?
If I'm the Jaguars, though, I'm like, haha, I know who you're trading up for. I'm gonna milk you for everything you got.
Oh, of course, yeah. It's gonna take a haul, but I mean, if you're the Falcons and you just took a swing on Judon and failed miserably, and you have to rebuild this team around Penix, and you need to go younger, I think it's actually a half decent move. So I think 15 to 5 it would be interesting, but so that's the biggest thing. Carter, absolute floor 5. We ready to move it on to our second player? Who do you guys have? And then I'll give mine. Because you said you disagreed, and you guys talked about this before I had my rankings fully done.
Yeah, so I think Tyler and I, our top 5 is the same guys, but different order. And then 6 to 12 or something crazy was same exact ranking. But my number 2 player is Mike Green. And Mike Green sold me at the Senior Bowl. I didn't need to see anything else. You
talked a lot about how at the Senior Bowl you started to question his get-off.
So, yes and no. I did not like the get-off for this one very reason, and it translated to the film, is Mike Green has a false first step, and it bugs the ever-living crap out of me. What I mean by that is what you're supposed to do as a defensive lineman, specifically edge player, your inside foot is supposed to be behind, and whatever foot is not shouldering the tackle is supposed to be the first foot forward. And in that being said, Mike Green, if he's shadowing the left tackle on the right side of the D line, he will stutter step with his right foot when it should be his left foot that gets over the line of scrimmage first, which is crazy because I was talking to Tyler about this also. He could be even faster off of the snap if he just doesn't stutter step. So I don't know why he does that or if the coaches even have realized this, but it bugs the crap out of me. But he's so very fast, even with that stutter step. He knows his assignment at all times. I've seen plays where he will lock eyes with the running back, not even quarterback. He knows his guy's the running back, and he's on that man like a hawk. So out of all the players in this class, out of all the edge players in this class, I think Mike Green has the second most potential. But
really, second highest ceiling?
I think so. not named Michael Williams.
Okay.
I will get to Michael Williams.
So that's third highest ceiling? Because Carter.
I would coin flip between Michael and Green for the number 2 spot, but Michael is number 4 on my list for a very good reason. But the only other thing was if he stands up, meaning high pad level, he will lose all leverage. I think they can easily block him out of the run game or the pass game, and he's just a non-factor. So if I'm coaching Mike Green, I'm telling him to get low.
I think that's non-uncommon thing for pass rushers to lose as soon as they get stood up like that. I mean, Danny Kelly for the Ringer has him comped to Sunbelt Nolan Smith. Do with that as you will. But when you said get stood up and you lose all power, my first thought was Hassan Reddick. Reddick, once you get stood up and you can get him at pad level, he's done for the rep, right? Because he's so low and bendy. That's not a complete deal breaker for me at edge rusher, but I do think you're right. It is something to discuss. PFF has Green at 3 among their edge rushers. The Ringer has him at 7. Daniel Jeremiah for NFL has him at 5. Kuiper has him at 4. And where did Yates have him? Field Yates had him at 4. So it seems to be between 3 and 5, basically, is consensus. You have him all the way at 2. Are you high, and you're good with being a little higher than most?
I'm okay with it. Again, when we started this, I said I'm looking for relentlessness. Even if he's blocked out of the play, I still see him churning his feet. He's still trying to make plays. So again, that's just what I look for in an edge player, and he checks that box.
While I have the Field Yates and Mel Kiper rankings pulled up. Something I noticed that's interesting between them, Yates has Jalen Walker 2 out of Georgia. Kiper does not have him ranked. I'm just on the ESPN article. Miller has Walker 2 as well, Matt Miller, and then Jordan Reed has him at 2. Kiper does not have Jalen Walker as an edge rusher. I do. Where do you guys land on Walker being in this group of edge defenders that we're talking about tonight?
It's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah, I just don't know where to put him. Because in what I've watched, he plays more, at least inside the A to B gap in an off-ball-ish kind of role than he does just purely on the edge. But he does that so much too. I kept him out of the edge rankings. I was going to list him as an off-ball linebacker. If we want to throw him in here, we could. I just haven't done a full deep dive on him yet with the edges.
The Ringer has him as a linebacker as well.
I am going for kind of a mix of both. So my note was I want to keep him at a wide 9, and if he's not at a wide 9, off ball at all times.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree.
6'2", 245. He's my edge 2. I have him as edge rusher for this class, and he's number 2 for me, which I think might throw off our rankings because, Ryan, you said you had Green. Tyler, you hadn't listed who you have at 2 yet.
I would probably put him at linebacker.
Okay.
Just outside linebacker is the perfect way to put it.
So the issue is that just like say that I'm forcing you for the sake of this conversation to put him at edge rusher. Where does he fall in your rankings? 2? Tyler, I understand. Just change the letters from OLB to edge just for this conversation as prospects. We'll future on consensus. I think we'll list him at linebacker. But for here, where would you slot him in?
I know, and this is where Walker is such a tough player for me. Because if he's listed as edge and he's just playing edge, then he's
losing all those linebacker traits.
And he's 5, maybe 6. And if he's just an off-ball linebacker, I haven't gone through linebackers yet, but he'd be 2, maybe 3 off the top of my head. It's the both that. So that's where I'm like, I almost can't rake him as either, because then that takes away from him.
Tyler's going to make a new position.
New position, Walker.
It's kind of a new position that's coming into the league, though.
It is. I've noticed.
It's not anything, because the jack linebacker is kind of where you play outside linebacker that also you can cover down as an apex defender in the slot if they want you to, and
that's kind of
3 to 4 down fronts.
That's kind of what Zach Bond did for the Eagles this year.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yep, exactly. And
Ish.
Dallas Turner in last draft was the prototypical Jack or Joker linebacker. It's called different things based on different schemes and coaches.
Right.
But he's not exactly that because he does play some middle linebacker. And he doesn't really go over the slot to cover, but then he kicks down from middle linebacker to edge. And so I don't know what to do with him.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say Jalen Walker,
Good
point
football
forward.
player.
We're just gonna call him a point forward.
Yeah.
Or just Jalen Walker, defender. Where do you have Jalen Walker, defender, out of Georgia on your big board? Among other linebackers / edge defenders.
Yeah, he's going to be top 15 for sure, probably higher. Like he'll probably end up being top 10.
I have him
Yeah,
at
I
8
released the
behind
big
Mason
board.
Graham.
My big board that is currently a mess because I am butchering it. I have him at 14 right now, but he's gonna fly next time I do it. So I'm probably gonna have him top 8, give or take. So the Walker conversation will wait another day. Just let it be known that he is a weird player. So if I'm taking him off my board, he's actually, so the way I have this laid out is I have 5 tiers of 16 edge rushers. Tier 1 is Abdul Carter. Tier 2 is just Jalen Walker because I didn't know what to do with him. And then tier 3 are my first rounders. So now that I'm removing Walker from this equation, that changes up who my number 2 is. Changing my spreadsheet. Number 2 now, I have Shamar Stewart out of
Me
Texas A&M.
too.
Oh, no way! Baller. Makes me feel smart. I
Yeah.
appreciate you confirming my priors.
He is just oozing with potential. He is 6'5". He is 281. He tomorrow will be an S tier run defender in the NFL. As soon as he steps foot in an NFL locker room, he's going to be one of the best edge defenders
Right.
at stopping the run.
As an edge defender, S tier run stopper, that is borderline unheard of. And it's gorgeous.
The positions that he's able to get in, there's one picture, and I tried to find it on Twitter so that I could send it in here and we could put it on the Spotify and the social clip, but I couldn't. It's of him going up against Logan Brown, tackle from Kansas at the Senior Bowl, and it's a run rep, and he's able to completely be bent to the side like this, long arm out, and still hold his gap. The flexibility that he has at 6'5", 281, ridiculous. And then the track that he's been on, it just makes sense. He's the number 9 recruit in the country when he's coming out in high school. He destroys people on film. And then he's going to be a high draft pick. That just makes sense to me.
Let it be known he was also the number 3 defensive lineman in his recruiting class while being number 9 overall, which says a lot about how many good linemen were in that class. But yeah,
Walter
no, he's
Nolan also in that class.
a heck of a year for the SEC and Ole Miss, dude. They're crazy. It's crazy how many I'm looking at this list and I'm sitting here looking at like Jared Ivey, Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton. And you just have so many SEC edge defenders and like defensive linemen in this class. It's so much fun. Luke Kennard out of South Carolina. But no, he's a baller. 31 tackles, 5.5 for loss, and 1.5 sacks. He is not bare. He's going to be 22 in the middle of next season. So he is young and he is an freakish athlete. And I'm excited to see how he performs at the combine because that I think could vault him into the top 15 in just big boards. And I have him at top 2 edge defenders.
See, I have him at 5 as an edge defender, but I'm thinking about moving him to IDL. And I think that might help him in his favor for draft purposes. He's a little bit heavier set. He's 281. Yeah, he weighed at 281 at the Senior Bowl.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I'm going off of.
Got it.
He might have been 290 during the season. But he plays so well off the ball as if he's like 260. I don't know if that's was in your notes as the first step, but he's so agile. Devastating in the run game, like Aaron said. But something I severely hate is the lack of hand fighting. No arsenal, kind of just relies on athleticism and bend rather than any technique.
allow me to say that I had that exact same issue with Jared Verse in the last class, where he used his power and speed more than his hands, and it concerned me. I was proven very wrong, which is one of the reasons I'm so high on Shamar this year, is because I looked at Verse and I watched him on film, and I'm just like, you have one move, and that's all you do. And I was very wrong.
That can be built. So, like, again, anything can be taught.
Right.
But as far as talent goes, yes, he's a very talented player. I mean, I still have him, let's see, 18 on my big board.
Right.
He's not bad. It's just as far as edge rankings go.
So you
I
have him at 5,
but
and you have 5 edge defenders in your top 18.
Brother, I'm right there with him.
Same.
I do.
But I wanted to bring that up because that's the kind of class this is, right? And that's 5 guys, not including Walker, who plays that pseudo linebacker point forward role, right? This is an insane defensive line class, and the more I dive into it, the more crazy it is. I want to revisit a point you said. You said that you would put him at interior, Ryan. We had a similar conversation with Missouri's Darius Robinson last year when he was drafted by the Cardinals. Would you say it's a similar situation where you're like, he's big enough to play interior, but he's good enough to play on the edge?
Yeah, and that's when we start talking about Aaron Donald comps.
Stop it. We do not use that name in this conversation.
It's hard, Aaron. It really is. And I think if he marketed himself as an IDL, he might receive a little more draft buzz, I would like to say. I would even maybe put him as high as 14, maybe right above Luther Burden. But again, combine.
Really? So if he just changed
RAS scores, I think so. I think he could absolutely add on 20, 30 pounds in 2 off seasons and become a Aaron Donald-like player.
By the way, Aaron Donald listed at 6'1", 285 going into the draft. So with Shamar
It's hard, Aaron. It's hard.
Standing 6'5", 280, we're going to move on from that conversation before I say something blasphemous.
But I will say the big difference, Shamar does not hand fight. He relies strictly on power.
I had in my notes, he tries to use his hands, and that's actually one of the big pluses for me. Is you see him trying to do stuff. Like there's a play where he's running the hoop. I think it's against South Carolina. Running the hoop is where you are running outside of the tackle and you're trying to bend and dip in. It's the classic Von Miller move to get to the quarterback. He's doing that, and you can see him. He tries to throw the hand that's closest to the tackle to knock off the hand of the tackle, and he just misses. And so that's kind of what happens for him. Is you see him doing stuff. You see him trying. It's not just all of this bull rush, bull rush, bull rush. He throws different moves, but it's just putting it all together for him. The biggest thing is the timing. I think he throws it late a lot of times, so you can tell he's really thinking. But as soon as that becomes second nature, dude, it's over.
So you're saying it's not, and it's not that he doesn't want to throw hands. It's that he is currently unable to. And as soon as he fixes that, he becomes a better player.
Yeah, and that's where I think he has a little more polish than people give him credit for. He's still a rawer prospect than Mike Green at this point with his hands, James Pierce Jr. with his hands, than Carter with his hands. But it's not that there's nothing there. It's just developing it a little bit.
All right. Ryan, you said you had Shamar at 5. I have Green at 5. And I think that, or actually, I need to update that now that I took Walker out of there. So now that's not 5. That is
4.
But yeah, I think you have Carter, and then there's a big old tier right behind Carter. Tier 2 for me is just first round guys. And I'm just going to run through this for you. I have Shamar Stewart, and then James Pierce Jr., and then Green, and then Williams, and then Ezeraku, and then Uman Mielen. And that is just my tier.
Well, hey, we have the top 5 all correct, I think, for all 3 of us.
What's that? Of Carter, Stewart,
Green,
Pierce,
Williams, and Stewart.
Yeah. Which, go us. Woohoo. But I think Ezeraku and Uman Mielen are more like borderline, mid to late firsts. Whereas the other guys, I would be comfortable taking them as high as like 10 to 15.
I think that's where things get a little iffy for you and me. I have Ezaraku at 8, but the next player I do want to talk about, James Pierce. So my notes for James Pierce are a little more detailed. So first thing I noticed was he collapses the pocket very well, or the running lane, and leaves little wiggle room for either the quarterback or the running back to move around, which is great. It's plugging a gap. It's filling a hole. His stance looked a little off balance for some reason. Couldn't really put my thumb on why. Hopefully, one of you could add some context for that. He can eat double blocks without giving ground, which I love because sometimes you're just asked to be an island. It's not typical for an edge rusher to get double teams, but it happens. And if it does happen, you need to be able to stand your ground, put your feet in the dirt, and not give up any room because they will move you like a mountain. He does tackle a little high. He needs to get upfield before he starts his stunt.
This is the I don't even know how to describe it. This is the weirdness of James Pierce, because I don't know how you guys went in. He's 6'5", 243. That's what he's listed. And so you think he's going to be this ultra explosive, super bendy, I'm winning with speed all the time. But like Ryan says, he's not.
Yeah.
He's not really this guy that's getting upfield and, just getting hips, like we talked about with Carter, getting hips across the other guy's hips and tossing off and bending around the pocket. So keep going. But that was the weirdest thing I thought when watching him.
Yeah, I did say he has average speed, but severe lack of upper body power. And that just became very noticeable when he starts extending himself too far. You can see he has little wiggle room and can't move the lineman with ease.
Oh, right. Well, for me, I think might have seen things a tad differently. So as far as power, he's only pretty much got speed to power. He is not going to walk people back to the quarterback, which is kind of a theme for some of these lighter guys. Same with the run game as well. He's got quick and violent hands, though. And that's, again, the thing that really surprised me, because normally when a guy's 243, that's not how he wins. But he has the best hand placement of all the edges in this class. He is all the time getting into tackles' chests. And because of that, even though he is a lighter guy, he's able to use this push-pull move, which is where you extend your arms all the way out, and then you pull the tackle or tight end, whoever's blocking you, down, and then you can go around them. And he shocks
Or
guys.
just straight up rip them.
Yeah, and he shocks guys with his initial strike, which I think is his best trait right now, because he doesn't have the freaky athleticism, the freaky bend. I want to see more of that if you're going to be 243. So, and in the run game, there's this one highlight against Tyler Booker, actually, of Alabama, where Booker's coming on a pull and Pierce lays him out. So if Pierce is able to be one-on-one and just strike guys in the run game, he's fine. But if it's anything else where he has to hold the edge and doesn't get momentum into it, he can hold ground, and that's about it. And so that's what has him low for me is we saw this at Tennessee. He didn't play a ton of snaps. And I wonder if he's the guy more than Mike Green that gets moved into a third down specialist.
I definitely could see it, because I think we're going to say this, it's very easy to say their biggest flaw is run defending when we're talking about edge rushers, right? Because there's two big things that edge rushers are asked to do, and that's rush the passer and stop the run. That's an oversimplification, but it's also the two big categories. And as an edge rusher, you want to run. You want to rush the passer. You want to get to the quarterback, get the strip sack, make the big play. Run defending is harder. It requires more effort. It requires getting yourself out of that tunnel vision that you go into as an athlete. It's just more difficult. And so it's easy to say that run defending is a weakness for a lot of prospects, but it's also very true for Pierce, right? Especially at his weight. I'm worried about him. Can he stop some of the bigger running backs, or some of the running backs that can get really quickly downhill? Like this, I know he's great, but like Derrick Henry.
Potential-wise, when we look at where Pierce could go, because it's not just how he is ready-made right now, it's how he could potentially be. I do think he could add 10 pounds to his frame. He's a lanky guy. He's got long legs, long arms. At least he looks like that. I know he hasn't gotten measured yet. So I think he has room to add weight, and that will help with the run defending. And it's just using that pop and making sure that he's always able to do that. Because I want to emphasize, I don't think he's a bad run defender. He's just average. And so I think that can keep him on the field at least. I don't think he'll turn into just a third down specialist. And then he also zone drops pretty solidly. You see him do it on tape a couple times, gets into flats or gets into little hook zones and has a decent feel about him for that. So
I'm
between
not
those
looking
two
for an
things-
edge defender to drop into coverage, so
But if you're not going to be great against the run, you got to do something to be on the field in first and second down. So that's what I'm saying is I think that combination of being average against the run and then being able to zone drop keeps him on the field and keeps him from being just a third down specialist.
But on the conversation of dropping back into coverage, the position of edge rusher, outside linebacker, is changing. It's evolving. Zach Bond, who was completely just an outside linebacker, pass rusher for the Saints for years, comes to the Eagles, and his role completely changes. Micah Parsons redefined his position when he came into the league. Abdul Carter is just an edge rusher, but Jalen Walker's not. Walker is listed at edge some places, linebacker others. And I think that the position is evolving in the same way in the NBA, the position of center evolved. So now Nikola Jokic is Nikola Jokic, and he does crazy stuff. Whereas, yeah, there's some guys who are just Giannis, and they're just going to run and dunk. But I think the position of edge defender, like the position of tight end and slot receiver and running back, is evolving to ask you to do more, including dropping into zone coverage, as well as, but still defending the run and rushing the passer.
The biggest two guys that come to mind for me is Andrew Van Ginkel of the Vikings and Nick Bonito of the Broncos, who have both had pick sixes last year because they are in the 240s. I think Bonito's 243. I think Van Ginkel's a little heavier in the 240s. And they're really good pass rushers, not great run defenders, but they bring that pass coverage aspect to keep them on the field. Because this was the other thing, and now we can get into it because James Pierce Jr. is under 245. Doing some research since 2010, only 27 seasons from defensive ends or outside linebackers that are under 245 of double-digit sacks. So only 27 seasons. So that means it can be the same player, but if they've had multiple seasons and they're under 245 since 2010, that fits the mold. There's 200 seasons of guys that are 250 and up. And what that means is big guys smash little guys, as Chip Kelly says.
I didn't like the way you phrased that.
That's how it works. I'm sorry. But that's how it works. Big guys dominate little guys a lot of the time. And that is not always true. You either need to be a psychopath, as we talked about. That's James Harrison, who did it once. A truly elite athlete, Micah Parsons, Robert Quinn, Hassan Reddick. And so not just a good athlete, I need you to be an elite athlete. Be able to cover, Andrew Van Ginkel, Nick Bonito. And even despite that, a lot of these guys you still have to scheme around. For a long time, to beat the Cowboys defense, you ran at Micah. Same thing with Van Ginkel and Bonito. You run at those guys. What did the Bills do in the Broncos playoff game? They ran at Bonito. And so you don't take those guys off your board. You don't take James Pierce Jr. Mike Green ended up being at 250, but if he was at 245, you don't take them off your board. You just have to really know how you're going to use them and what their defensive role is going to be, because you know you're probably, unless they are extremely violent or a truly elite athlete, they're going to be kind of a liability against the run.
So I want to ask a quick question, and then we really got to move on because we have talked about a total of 5 guys, and we've spent 50 minutes. Do you think that statistic is kind of off? And I'm saying that not because the stat is wrong, but because, yeah, of course there would be more 10-plus sack seasons, double-digit sack seasons of guys 250-plus than there is guys minus 250, because there's way more guys at 250-plus playing edge than there is under 250. So do you think it's just weighted because of the amount of players at that weight class, or is it really just it's harder to succeed at that weight in the NFL, or is it a little bit of both?
Well, that's my point, is that it's harder to succeed at that weight.
No, but what I'm saying is I think could the stat be weighted by just the amount of players in each of those weight classes?
Kind of. I see what you're saying, but there's a reason that there aren't that many to pick from the 245 camp. And that's because it doesn't work a ton. But my point even more than that is that, okay, if these guys are in the 245 range, you need to have this trait, or this trait to be able to still succeed. But I would say the fact that there's not that many 245-pound and under edge rushers to pull from is kind of the point in and of itself, that just doesn't happen a whole lot.
We have talked about 5 edge rushers in a class of like 15. So let's keep it trucking.
I think we forgot to talk about him.
I was getting there. All
My
right.
fault. Sorry, my fault.
I think that there is one more guy in this group of 5 edge rushers that we all have in our top 5 of Abdul Shamar, Mike Green, James Pierce Jr., and then Mykel Williams out of Georgia.
Yeah, this would be the last guy in that tier that you were talking about.
I'm not the biggest fan of Mykel. Tyler, you said you wanted to convince me of him.
Yes. So this is the Mykel Williams theory, and this actually kind of applies to Shamar Stewart as well. So there's what's called a mint front or a tight front in football. That means you're going to have a nose guard, and then you're going to have 2 4 eyes, which means that you are on the inside of the tackle. That's where Mykel Williams played a lot. He had almost as many snaps in the A gap and the B gap as he did outside of the tackle this year. What does that mean? You don't get a ton of one-on-one pass rush opportunities because you're inside of the tackle. And so he's not going to be as productive, same with Shamar Stewart, because you're not going to get that many opportunities. It's what Ryan talked about with knowing what your job is. They're playing the run at that point. And then after they play the run and are looking for a double team, then they're going to the pass rush. But when he gets one-on-one opportunities with tackles, dude, he eats them alive. It's crazy. And so I think that you'll be able to translate that. If you want him to play more in the outside, he'll be able to win out there. It's just a matter of giving him the opportunities. But man, is he valuable in that B gap because he is such a good run defender. Same thing as Stewart.
He is, he's the prototypical build, right? 6'5", 265. He's exactly what you want to see in an edge rusher, and how, if you're going to build an edge rusher, and that's your starting point, right? You can adjust the sliders up and down, but you start at 6'5", 265. Freaky athlete. It was hard for me on tape not to just look away and watch Walker on a given play when Williams was there, because Walker just jumped off the tape. He's a bullet. Whereas Williams, good player, I don't have him. He's not the same borderline blue chip level prospect that Walker is.
And that's what you see actually is so funny is the Georgia will bump Mykel down into the B gap to have Walker play on the edge. And so Walker gets all of these one-on-one opportunities just going up against tackles in pure pass rush situations. And Walker's out there just eating blocks. And so I feel a little bit bad for him, but it's true.
So
it's what
Georgia had a favorite son?
Yeah.
So I will add, I have Mykel 17 on my big board. Shamar's at 18. So again, a very small.
Flippy floppy.
Yeah. So Mykel is, in my layman's terms, the definition of a bull. He is what I'm looking for in a prototypical NFL edge prospect. And I would like to argue he's the most raw out of the edge prospects, but with fine tuning, he could be up there with Carter. And I know for a fact, and you guys can quote me on this after the combine, the measurables will be there. He'll just be a tad bit slow because he's a little heavier set, but that's okay. I can see on the tape he is the first one off the line of scrimmage not named Jalen Walker, so I'm okay with it. But again, a little bit more hand fighting. I sound like a broken record, but I need a little bit more there. And maybe even a second move in mind. Like when I think of how I'm going to attack the tackle or the guard, I need my first plan of attack, and B, if that plan of attack doesn't work, a second plan of attack. So I didn't see really a second plan of attack. If his first plan of attack didn't work, he kind of just stood there and was like, all right, I lost this rep. But again, most raw player out of all of these in the draft, and that's why, Aaron, I have him above Shamar Stewart, because I think the potential is there.
Got it. So he's more raw of a player, but you like what you see, and you think you could mold him into someone that's better.
Precisely.
Gotcha.
I originally had him like top 10 on the big board. So I did move him down, but that comes with coaching and nurture. He will be of the same level as Abdul Carter.
On that point, the nurture point, there's the nature versus nurture conversation with children, but also with NFL prospects, because, one and the same. I think more than anybody, Shamar Stewart and Michael Williams, it matters where they land more than anybody else in this edge rusher class.
Not even just where they land, it's how they use them. We saw Solomon Thomas.
Where they land is defined. How they use them is defined on how they land.
I guess, yeah. But one of my favorite case studies is Solomon Thomas. And I will stand on this hill till I die. The 49ers did not use him like he was intended to. They played him out of position. He's meant to be a 3-tech. And they didn't play him at 3-tech. So that's just a grudge I hold with the 49ers because they completely ruined his career.
Well, you can hold a grudge with every team in the league for saying, oh, yeah, you ruined this guy's career by not playing him in the right position, which is why I'm saying that landing spot for Shamar and for Michael matters more than anybody else in this edge rusher class.
Yes, I would agree with that statement.
Thank you. Shout out. So I think that's the top 5, right? It's Abdul Carter. This is my rankings, but I think we all have the same 5 guys: Abdul Carter, Shamar Stewart, Mike Green, Michael Williams, James Pierce Jr. And I think I'd break them into 2 tiers: Abdul, the other 4, and then we get to tier 3 for me, which is mid to late firsts: Donovan Ezeraku, Princely Uman-Mielen, Boston College, and Ole Miss, respectively. We mocked Princely to the Eagles in the last class. We did not have Donovan going in the first round, but I like what I see from Ezeraku. Am I crazy, or am I just crazy? I don't know. Am I crazy?
You are crazy, but not in that sense.
Okay, cool.
So I would put Scorton above Uman-Mielen and Ezeraku. I had Ezeraku a little bit higher when we first started this process, but some of the other guys just pop off. And no disrespect, but Ezeraku, I feel like on the first day of Senior Bowl, he was terrific. And then I didn't hear his name the rest of the week. So I don't really know what happened there, but as far as where I have him on the big board, I have him on at 38, but Princely Uman-Mielen's at 32, and Nick Scorton's at 25. So again, not much drop off, but I think it's significant to where they go, how they're used as well. Same talking point you were just using, Aaron. Any notes I have on them? Scorton, we could just blaze through these guys because, again, this is just a different tier. I'm not going to go as in depth about these guys as I am Mike Green. Nick Scorton, very light on his feet, but can get thrown off balance if timed correctly. Tyler and I, we were talking about timing your punches as a no lineman. So that's a little odd because he's a little heavier set, but he's very late on his feet.
He's another one where, and I'll get to this with Sawyer and JTT as well, the Ohio State guys. Scorton is 6'4", 280. He plays for some reason like he's 6'3", 245. Like he's trying to.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No.
He's light on his feet, very agile again.
Yeah, he moves really well for 280, but
that's what I'm saying. I hate bringing this to the NBA again, but it's the Victor Wembanyama conversation, right? You're like, great, Wemby, you have guard skills at 7'2". You can shoot and you can dribble like a guard, but also you're 7'2". Back a guy down, which I think is what you're saying here about this edge defender.
Yes, because he moves well for his size. He moves well for his size. He has a really good spin move and some other things with his hands, but they're not this elite tier. So they're not Wemby being 7'5" with guard skills, where that's something we've never seen. It's just good. And so when you come to Nick Scorton and he's 280 pounds, I want to see him run through people's chest and bull rush. And like Ryan said, I really just don't see that at all on tape. Not at all. There's a couple times, but overall, he needs to show that more because he's not going to consistently win with the spin move, with the speed. That's got to be your secondary, and I need your primary to be that power.
Yeah. I personally think he has a great pass rush move set, and he actually switches his up, which is something I loved, and it was one of my talking points. I go back to whoever we were just talking about. I think it was Michael. I didn't see a second plan in mind. Nick Scorton
Yeah, you said that. You said that Michael
isn't
liked to just stand around when he got beat.
yeah. Nick Scorton doesn't do A B C A B C A B C in his head. He'll actually switch it up, and it doesn't allow the tackle or the guard to have like a tendency in mind. He always knows what he's going to do, and he switches it up, which I love. And some people just don't. They just go, all right, I'll swim move, and then spin move, and then cross chop, like first, second, third down, and they do it every single time, and it annoys me. Anyway,
You just got red in the face talking about edge rushers making you mad.
yes, Nick Scorton is a amazing player because of his effort, and I can't wait to see how high he goes because again, a Texas A&M D line with Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart should have been so much better. And I mean, the D line was phenomenal, but the defense was iffy sometimes this season. But
How did that I'm sorry, what? Sorry, I was just scrolling through Daniel Jeremiah's rankings because I wanted to see where he had Scorton. He has Malachi Starks at 33, and it just completely threw me off.
He does.
Man, DJ, what are you doing, brother? Oh, right, he doesn't have Scorton in the top 50.
I think isn't Daniel Jeremiah the one that like has never been in an NFL front office though?
I think there's a lot of guys who have never been in an NFL front office.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I think-
take everything you hear with a grain of salt.
Hand up, guys. We haven't been in an
Never
NFL
been in
front
an
office.
23
That
years
is
old
I.
across the board. Yeah, don't hold that against people because I'm looking at these rankings. Like Danny Kelly, Daniel Jeremiah. I think definitely Field Yates. I don't know about Miller. Kuiper, I don't think was in an NFL front office, and a lot of these guys are just like fantastic. I give Kuiper credit; he invented the job we're now doing.
He was a college scout, Daniel Jeremiah was, with the Ravens, Browns, and Eagles.
All right, shut
There
up,
you
Ryan.
go. Okay, so maybe it was a different guy. It might have been like Field Yates or someone.
Yeah.
Or Matt
Yates
Miller.
Yates does fantasy, and he kind of just recently got into draft. But I want to talk real quick about Ezeraku and Iman Mielen. Ezeraku, I like him because brother's smart. I don't think he's as explosive of an athlete as some of these other guys, but I really like. How old is this kid? How old?
He's
is this kid?
21.4, according
Yeah,
to
exactly.
PFF.
He's 21. He plays like he's 26. I see a lot of his like the same intelligence I saw in Laiatu Latu that I really liked in last year's class. Granted, Laiatu kind of didn't do much, and edge is still a massive need for the Colts. But I like it again in Ezeraku. I like what he brings to the table.
Donovan Ezeraku, fun fact, he is 6'2" with 34-inch arms. Just very, very, it's something you don't really see a lot because normally when you're shorter wingspan, but don't think you have to really worry about that with him.
Nah, he keeps his phone in his cargo pants pocket.
Yeah. What turned me off of him, honestly, is I was watching Armand Membu, and they played Boston College. And I was looking for Ezeraku because I knew at that point I didn't know his name, but I knew, hey, there's an edge rusher for Boston College who's supposed to be a top 50, top 100 guy. And I went, okay, we'll see if we can find him. And he didn't stand out to me. And so that left not an amazing taste in my mouth. Good taste in my mouth. Good Senior Bowl. Looked pretty solid. Somebody was saying, I think it was Todd McShay, was saying that he came up to him and said he was trying to show his power more because people knew that he had speed. And I think he showed that at the Senior Bowl, but in a deep edge class, I also have him at 8 with Ryan. I like guys like Princely and Scorton more than him.
I have him at 6, so I have him above Scorton and Princely, but also 16 and a half sacks in 2024.
I think some of the sacks were a little luck. If I'm not going to lie, I can't tell you off the top of my head which ones, but I think like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 of those sacks might have just like fallen into his lap.
Okay, so you still bring that down. That's still 12 and a half sacks in the ACC on Boston, playing for Boston College.
Oh, yes. He's still one of the best players in the ACC, but it's the ACC.
I hear you. If the Eagles took him at 32, I'd be applauding. I'd be really okay with it.
This is a
Mitchell,
guy that I think they actually might take, Princely Uman-Mielen.
Yeah, we had him mocked.
Yep. So comes in, weighs in at 264, which is heavier than he was listed, 34-inch arms. This guy has the ideal pass rushing body, 6'4", 264, 34-plus inch arms. Dude, to me, I think he's the best pure pass rusher in this class. He's at least fighting for it. He's definitely got the best speed rush and bend combo. Man, what I need him to do, though, is want to play the run, because you can see a huge change in his body language and how excited he gets when he gets to rush the passer versus when he has to take on a pulling guard. There's a switch there in Princely Uman-Mielen's mind, but he's got the traits to where he should be able to do it. And so that's what keeps him high for me. The pass rushing potential is so high. It's not even really potential. He just shows it.
Yeah,
And
10 and a half sacks in 2024, 13 and a half tackles for loss.
Yep.
Which you want to look at that stat, 13 and a half tackles for loss. That includes sacks, which means he had 3 non-sack TFLs. Not the best.
No, that's not his strength.
Yeah.
Love how he gets skinny, doesn't open his chest to tackles, so guys aren't able to get a hold of him. Works his hands really well, especially when he's running the hoop. He's able to get those hands off of his inside shoulder so he can bend around it. Not a lot of power in his game. You see it occasionally, but it's not a thing for him. So those are the things that I'm looking at when I look at Princely Uman-Mielen.
Right. And we had him mocked to the Eagles, which the more I think about him, the better I like it. Because the Eagles are a fantastic run defending team because of how well Cooper DeJean, Zach Bond, and CJ Gardner-Johnson tackle in the second level.
And Nakobe
Dean, apologies. I forgot that Dean was on the team after him getting hurt. Brutal. But, they have a ton of really good tacklers in the second level, which is why we do have a tuck your ears back, get after the pass rusher like Uman-Mielen. It's something that they can afford to have, and something they can afford to take a shot on.
Yeah, again, I think it's just a different tier with these guys. I would argue that Scorton, Uman-Mielen, and Ezeraku are at a different tier than 9, 10, 11, 12, and beyond.
I'm right there with you.
I
mean,
am also
again,
with you.
Aaron, I don't know who you have, but as far as 9, 10, 11, and 12, I think I have Jack Sawyer. I have Baron Sorrell. I have JTT. I threw in Omar Norman Lott because I think he's listed as edge in some places, but I obviously would put him at IDL. I don't think he ever played the edge with Tennessee.
He didn't. That's interesting that he's listed as an edge some places.
And then Jared Ivey's 13 for me personally. Tyler, I think this is where our list breaks. I have Landon Jackson at 14. Antoine Powell-Ryland at 15 out of Virginia Tech. And then Kyle Kennard. I don't know how you guys
I think it's Kennard.
It's Kennard, yeah.
Yeah. I really wanted to love him. And I had to include him at number 16 because I think he could be a sneaky pick and jump some of these guys for whatever reason. Personally, I just could not get behind him. Let me find my notes on him real fast. Kennard got better every single year he was at South Carolina. Great NFL body. So when we're talking about that prototypical type we're looking for, he has it. But he just gives up so much ground in space that it's almost a turnoff. And I don't know how you fix something like that, but as far as pass rush goes, same case for Uman-Mielen. You see his eyes light up. He wants to get into the nitty gritty, but will get blocked out of the play if it's a run play.
Yeah.
So lack of success with a second move again is just something that needs to be taught.
That feels
it should be second nature, Aaron. You shouldn't even have to think about it. All right, my first move didn't work on you. What am I going to do next? Am I going to do a little nasty swing move?
Hands to the face.
Face mask? Horse collar? I'll drag you down in the dirt with me. I don't care. It's a little concerning for Kennard, but I think Kennard is one of those, not risers, but it could be one of those guys that I could be like, all right, I see it. But do not be surprised if half of this list does not pan out.
Two names that you didn't mention. You had a few names in there that I didn't know or I didn't recognize. Two names in there that you didn't mention that we can cut this if you have no notes on them. Jordan Birch out of Oregon.
I don't know what to do with him.
I mean, 10th overall on the freaks list, second in pass rushers, crazy athletic. PFF has him at 15. And then the other one was Josiah Stewart out of Michigan, who Jeremiah has at 9 and PFF has at 14.
You know who he reminds me of without the elite, like, athletic level? Brandon Graham, who also came out of Michigan. I don't know if that's like shooting for the moon right there, but...
Well, that's interesting. He actually reminded me of another Eagle because he's 6'1", 240. Hassan Reddick is who came to mind because that's who
Former Eagle. No ring for him.
Yeah. That's who
Shunned.
That's who he needs to be because there's no one else at that size who's been successful as an edge defender. So you're hoping he's Hassan Reddick because there's not anyone else to point to.
All right, so Josiah Stewart sounds like we're just not going to draft him unless he plays a little bit of off ball.
He's
Tyler,
good, though. Really explosive, dude. Like, crazy twitch.
What do you think about Birch? Because I feel like that was a name. I have him at 12. Like, I have the tier of late first, early seconds. Very late firsts, mind you. Sawyer, Ivy, JTT, and then Birch. Those 4 guys for me.
So, I didn't really get to watch Birch yet, and I wonder if he's a kick down candidate because he's 6'6", 285 right now. And he's not an amazing, just like bendy athlete, which doesn't disqualify him. But when you look at him at 6'6", 285 and Shamar Stewart
But
at 6'6",
Tyler, he's 10th on the freaks list.
well, because he's freaky, but it's not in the bendy way. It's more in the strong way.
Super freak.
Yeah.
Because when you look at Shamar Stewart, 6'5", 281, Jordan Birch, 6'6", 285, Stewart moves in a completely different way than Birch does. So I wonder if Birch ends up kicking down. And honestly, I didn't put him on this list because that might be something, and I haven't watched him yet.
What was Robinson's height and weight in the last years when he came out of the draft? Because
He's
I feel
285?
like 285. So it's a very similar conversation, right? Because we were talking about kicking him down to the inside as well.
Yeah. What's a little tough is Robinson actually started playing defensive tackle at Missouri, and at one point was 305, and so you had proof of concept. Birch has always played edge, and then Stewart's always played edge. And so when you talk about kicking those guys to D-line, it gets a little washed.
Yeah. It's much more difficult to convert a defensive edge to a defensive lineman than it is to convert a tackle to a guard. Because let me gather my thoughts here.
Tackle to guard, yes. Guard to tackle is
Tough
also
because,
hard.
Well, offensive tackle requires a very different skill set than offensive guard or body type. You need long arms, you need elite get off, and you need that at guard too, but not nearly to the same degree. When you're looking at defensive edge to defensive tackle, you're asking them, there's a different job description for those two roles.
Yeah,
right?
It's not just adding on weight.
Right. It's not adding on weight. It's not saying you're still going to block the passer, but this time you're also going to pull. Like if you said tackle to guard and tackle, they're the same language spoken with different accents. It's different languages when you're talking about edge rushers versus interior defenders because you're asking them to do completely different jobs. You're asking them to say, hey, you're going to disrupt from the middle. You're not going to get around and try and keep the pocket the way that it is. You're not going to try and collapse the pocket. You're just going to go up the middle. If there's a run, you got to completely change who you are and what you're doing. By the way, 6'5", 285, 34 and a half inch arms for Darius Robinson. Very similar to Jordan Birch.
Are there any other guys, inside your top 15 that I'd like sleepers?
I like that. I think Jackson's interesting. Landon Jackson, another guy on the freaks list that I found. He was 5 in edge rushers, 21st overall on the freaks list. So I think he's an interesting prospect, but that's more of just based purely.
I still think that video. Tyler did a video of it on his TikTok account. Landon Jackson
Yeah.
That one drill that just everyone laughed about.
He's
him for
come a
years.
long way. Yeah, my notes on him: violent player, really, really good taking on blocks, pullers in the run game. Got some good, powerful hands.
Oh, shoot. I didn't have a face to the name. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I know the drill now. Okay.
He pushes people back in the run game. He's 270. He's a big guy.
It's Slap Happy. That's his new nickname.
Yeah. The cons I have for him, though, lets guys get in his chest really easily, which you don't want to see when you're a guy with long arms. That's supposed to be the thing, is you don't let them get in your chest. Just not a ton of effort at times, I wrote down. And he's really stiff. He just does not have flexibility. He's not going to give
You
you
can
any
see that
bend.
in the drill that went viral.
Exactly. And he's improved from there, obviously. But the stiffness is still there. So
All right, we're going to have to cut Ryan because if you put that there, that means it's going to show up in the
Oh, does it? Sorry,
the
I was
edit.
just sharing it for you guys, like whoever's not speaking.
Discord.
no, I got it on my phone.
All right. Sorry,
Hold
I'll
on.
take it off.
Tyler, can you say that last point one more time?
From which his cons, or like all of them, or
No, just say start at the he's improved from that point, obviously.
Okay. He's improved from that drill in high school, obviously, that went viral, but the stiffness is still there. And then the last con that I saw is another hands thing, but just hands outside of the shoulder pads a lot. He's not getting into offensive linemen's chests.
It's so funny that you keep talking about these cons, and all I can think about is you say hands, and my first thing is that drill that pops into my head. That's brutal for him. Poor guy. NFL.com has him at eventually will be a plus starter. So good for him. I think he's an interesting prospect, but standing, I mean, he's tall, dude. He's, what is it, 6'7"? Yeah, 6'7", 280. So another kick down prospect, maybe?
He's 6'5.5" at the Senior Bowl.
Really?
Yeah.
Who listed as 6'7"? That it's on NFL.com is 6'7".
He's 6'5.5" and then 273 with 10-foot arms and 6'10" wingspan. Almost
I desperately
6'11".
desperately need combine measurements.
What did you just use the Senior
I
Bowl
wish there was a
ones? The Senior Bowl
centralized
ones
place to put
are
them
official.
everywhere.
Well, we can make one. We need to just make a centralized big board so we can have all the same measurements. And so I don't sound like a moron bringing up NFL.com ones that are just
You gotta
wrong.
look at the Senior Bowl ones, man. What's up?
That was my issue. Is there any other edge rushers that we have not hit that we really need to? I think that's actually everybody I can think of.
The only one
Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss.
that's
exists.
like definition of mid for me.
Yeah.
But someone I also could look at is Barron Terrell, and I will say
From
it's
where?
Texas.
Texas? Okay.
It's an interesting case study for me because he was, I think, not named Mike Green, the most talked about edge at the Senior Bowl, and there was some lack of arm length that I didn't take note of at the Senior Bowl, but he's one of those guys that knows his deficiencies and makes up for it somewhere else. And what I mean by that is he will get in your face and grab on and control your every move because he knows his arms or arm length is not there. He's a little slow, more than a little slow, getting off the snap. But you see, he's just a kid that goes out there and has fun. And that's still like what it's about in this game.
It's a game. You need joy.
Yeah.
I think some people take it too seriously.
He
Jalen
has
Hurts.
a very small arsenal of pass rush moves. So I would like to see that get a little expanded, and then does get lost in the woods sometimes. But again, someone that just plays with a relentless motor. You can see he's having fun out there. So sky's the limit, but definitely in this mid-tier, someone I would not be opposed to taking a swinger on. I have him at 49 on the big board, so just inside the top 50. But I would absolutely maybe take an early day 2 pick on Brandon Terrell.
Yeah. Are y'all ready to get out of here? I think we're good on edge rushers. We talked for almost an hour and a half about 15 players and focused mostly on 6. Thank you all for listening. It's been a good show. I'm excited to keep doing these positional breakdowns. Go USA, because we're going to watch that as soon as this ends, probably on the same call. Thank you all for listening. Mind the gap on your way out.